In the last 24 hours, the tectonic plates of Middle Eastern geopolitics have not just shifted, they have fractured beyond repair. Most observers are looking at the headlines and seeing a standard military escalation. They are wrong. What we are witnessing is the calculated execution of what I call the endgame scenario. Netanyahu did not just break a ceasefire. He signaled the formal end of the post-World War II diplomatic order. Right now, as I record this in April 2026, the White House is in a state of reactive frenzy. The Islamabad talks, which were supposed to be the breakthrough of the decade, have exploded, to use the Prime Minister's own words. The United Nations is paralyzed, and regional powers are waking up to a terrifying new reality. There is no longer an off-ramp.
In this session, I will break down my exclusive framework on why this happened at this exact moment. The secret red line that was crossed behind closed doors during the J.D. Vance phone calls, and why, for the first time in his career, Netanyahu believes he is truly untouchable. If you believe this is merely a border dispute, you are missing the forest for the trees. Stay with me because the middle of this analysis reveals a shift in Israeli military doctrine that will redefine the next decade of global conflict. To understand why the ceasefire collapsed, we must first understand the Jiang calculus. In the eyes of the current Israeli leadership, ceasefires are not peace treaties. They are logistical resets. They are periods of strategic silence used to let the enemy settle into a false sense of security, while intelligence assets are repositioned and satellite mapping is updated. The break we saw this week did not happen by accident. It was a surgical response to the failure of the Islamabad negotiations. While the world watched the diplomats in Pakistan, Netanyahu was watching the Strait of Hormuz. For months, the international community has begged for restraint. But restraint is a currency that Benjamin Netanyahu is no longer trading in. Why now? My analysis points to three non-negotiable factors. First, internal political survival. The 2026 budget was passed just weeks ago, securing Netanyahu's coalition. He no longer fears an early election. He only fears a peace that looks like a retreat. In the current Israeli political climate, any compromise is viewed as a defeat. Anything less than the total dismantling of the axis of resistance infrastructure is seen as political suicide. Second, the distraction of the great powers. Netanyahu is a master of timing. He knows that the American political machine is currently consumed by its own internal debates and the fallout of the March strikes on Tehran. He understands that while Washington might issue stern warnings, they will not cut off the flow of high-end munitions while the Strait of Hormuz remains a contested battleground. And third, this is the detail the media has overlooked. My research suggests the IDF identified a structural weakness in the Hezbollah command chain in Beirut that offered only a 72-hour window of opportunity. To wait for diplomatic clearance from the U.S. envoy would have been to forfeit a massive military advantage. Netanyahu chose to strike while the iron was hot. But this leads us to a deeper question. If the whole world is watching, why is nobody moving to stop him? Historically, when a regional power goes rogue, there are established checks and balances. Economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, or the looming threat of withdrawn military aid. However, Netanyahu has effectively called the world's bluff. As I have stated in my previous lectures, power only exists if you are demonstrably willing to use it. The West has signaled its red lines so many times that those lines have faded from red to pink to invisible. Netanyahu is not listening to what the State Department says. He is observing what they do, and what they are doing is essentially nothing. This has created a massive power vacuum, a vacuum being filled by a new, aggressive Israeli posture that I call hyper-realism. This is no longer about simple defense. It is about the total reconstruction of regional security. Netanyahu's logic is simple. If the international community cannot secure the Strait of Hormuz, then Israel will secure its own survival by any means necessary, regardless of the cost to global energy markets. But there is a hidden layer here that requires our attention. Beyond the religious and political rhetoric lies a multi-billion-dollar struggle for the Eastern Mediterranean energy corridor. Was the ceasefire break actually a tactical move for long-term resource security? My data suggests that the answer is yes. When you control the coastlines of Gaza and Lebanon, you control the offshore gas fields. When you control the gas, you control the energy future of Southern Europe. This isn't just a war, it's a hostile takeover of regional infrastructure. We must now address the core of my thesis. Why is Netanyahu currently unstoppable? It comes down to what I've termed the no-stop doctrine. In previous decades, Israel relied heavily on United States approval for major escalations. Today, the IDF has achieved a level of technological and domestic manufacturing autonomy that allows them to go dark for weeks at a time without external resupply. The use of AI-directed munitions and domestic drone swarms has changed the logistical math of war. Netanyahu knows that by the time the international community organizes a coherent response, drafts a meaningful resolution, or coordinates a multilateral sanction, the facts on the ground will have already changed. He is playing a high-stakes game of speed versus bureaucracy. In the modern age of warfare, speed wins every single time. Furthermore, we must look at the psychology of the survivor leader. When a leader's personal freedom and political legacy are inextricably tied to the continuation of a conflict, the conflict becomes the only logical path forward. We are seeing the total fusion of a state's national security interests with one man's survival instincts. This is a dangerous precedent for any democracy, and it signals a shift toward a more autarkic military state. For years, we were told that the world was becoming multipolar, that China, Russia, and the BRICS nations would provide a counterweight to Western-backed actions. Where are they now? China's response to the breaking of the ceasefire has been limited to boilerplate statements. Russia is too bogged down in its own theater of war and the recent Orthodox Easter truce to exert real influence. This has emboldened Netanyahu. He has realized that the multipolar world is currently a paper tiger when it comes to the Levant. He is essentially proving that a mid-sized power with advanced technology and absolute domestic will can ignore the global consensus with zero immediate repercussions. This lesson is being watched very closely by other regional powers. If Israel can rewrite the rules in Lebanon, what stops others from doing it in the South China Sea or the Balkans? We are watching the rules of the game being rewritten in blood and concrete. Let us talk about the cost. Not just the human cost, which is tragic, but the structural economic cost. By breaking the ceasefire, Netanyahu has ended the era of managed conflict. We are now in unmanaged conflict. This means the stability premium on global oil, which is already flirting with $120 a barrel, is going to remain high for years. If you are an investor, you need to understand that the Middle East discount is a thing of the past. The volatility we are seeing today is the new baseline. Netanyahu's actions have effectively told the global markets that no trade route is guaranteed and no border is final. The energy shock triggered by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is being exacerbated by the escalation in Lebanon. This ripple effect will be felt from the gas pumps in Ohio to the shipping hubs in Shanghai. So, where does this lead us? If Netanyahu cannot be stopped by his allies and he cannot be stopped by his enemies, what is the finale? My analysis predicts 3 possible outcomes for the next 6 months. First, the shattered north scenario. This involves a full-scale ground invasion of Lebanon to create a permanent buffer zone. This would effectively end Lebanon as a sovereign state and create a permanent war zone that would bleed the region for a generation. Second, the Fortress Israel model. In this scenario, the borders are permanently redrawn through military force, and the concept of a two-state solution is buried forever. Israel moves toward a state of permanent mobilization. And third, the most likely and most grim, is the perpetual friction state, a reality where ceasefires are never signed, only whispered, and the region remains in a permanent state of high-intensity kinetic warfare. No winners, only survivors. We are entering a post-ceasefire era. The rules that governed international relations since 1945 are being shredded in real time before our eyes.
Netanyahu's decision to break this ceasefire is not just a military action. It is a philosophical declaration. It tells the world that in the 21st century, might does not just make right, might makes reality. I ask you to look past the immediate noise of the news cycle. Look at the structures being built and the ones being destroyed. Is this a masterstroke of national security, or is it a march toward an inescapable fire? The data suggests we will have our answer by the end of the month. Until then, maintain your vigilance. Do not accept the headlines at face value. Analyze the movements, not the words. I am Professor Jiang. Thank you for your time and your attention. We will speak again as the situation evolves. Goodbye for now.